Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for participating. It should be pretty interesting. I suppose we need to do a roll call, make this a real meeting. Brian, can you do that, please?
Yes. Matt Wild.
Present.
Chair Augie Huber.
Here.
Brett Standard.
Here.
Cindy Geyer.
Present.
Paul Rodriguez.
Here.
Jason Wright.
Here.
Vice Chair Jim Brown.
Present.
Mitch Dringman.
Here.
Zach McCracken.
Here.
Wow. All right, well, few introductory remarks. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this. It's sort of an unprecedented and uncharted waters for me, at least. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping first, and then we'll move on to comments and discussions. And one of the things I'd like to know is who's represented here today? And I don't, how many people are, for example, how many people are builders, AGC members? How many people are ABC members? Other, with no organization other than perhaps IBEW and the other organizations. So if you could just in the comments, put that down so we'll capture it and we'll know who we've heard from today. All right, with a little bit of history, I don't know if we need to approve the minutes since this is a special meeting. We can do that at the next regular meeting. And the only thing on the agenda is this House Bill, whatever it is, 2588. And we've gotten some written comments online, and we've gotten some just feedback from others, and everybody on the board has, what I hope to end up with is a clear consensus of what our board position is, and then know that we're representing the position of most of the members of Johnson County Contractor Licensing. So anybody that would like to speak, I don't know how many people have registered for that. Brian, could you?
We don't have anybody.
All right. Well, and I don't have any specific remarks because I wanted to listen to everybody. So,
Brian, did you send out, or does the board have copies of the comments that were submitted to us in writing overnight?
we just got them.
The board here does. I wasn't able to send out an email to the other members.
So we've not read them.
I will do that for you right now.
Okay. Well,
I'm just curious, Augie, is my assumption is that everybody that's on this call today is not supporting the bill. Is that true? Or is there anybody that is present today that is for and would like to speak positively about the proposed bill? I'm just curious.
so anybody that's online, we encourage you to speak up.
So my name's Curtis Dynas. I'm with the Heart of America chapter with ICC. I work out here in Hayes. The Heart of America chapter had a meeting here last week about a couple of bills, this one and 418 regarding the 2018 IRC. With this bill, in a stance as far as building officials go, we're not necessarily against statewide licensing for the point of a contractor being able to have a license in the state of Kansas that's good for everywhere, because the intent of that would be to lower some cost because then they don't have to have a license in every jurisdiction that they work. That's the intent of what they're trying to do. I had a contractor reach out to me yesterday that talked to the bill sponsor, Representative Wilcott. And I highly encourage that after we have any comments or concerns or things like that, that we reach out to him specifically because he's willing to ask questions and give back end information about that. Now, some of the processes and definitions or whatnot about how it works, in my opinion, is not necessarily the best way to go yet because it is a major change of how things go. So again, we're not necessarily against the state licensing part. It's just coming up with a program that would work with kind of how, keeping with some home rule things, but because ultimately too, a city still has to register people and get them into their tracking mechanism software for permitting and issuing permits. So there's still going to be some type of accountability the local jurisdiction has. And that's not clear on what that role is of how does that work with a local jurisdiction? And especially if you're having accountability with the state fire marshal, having to be able to revoke or do everything with a license. I'm assuming they would claim that, well, the board that they create with their representatives and appoint would come up with more detailed policies. But if we have no idea how that's going to work, it's hard to trust that it would get positive for all our jurisdictions.
Thank you. And Ms. Daines, I really appreciate your letter that you wrote to Senator Billiner. It was very well crafted and concise.
And I haven't sent that letter yet because I wanted to get some feedback as well to make sure we're catching a few of those others. But my plan is to send, because out west, that's who our representative is, but hopefully send it to Representative Wilcott as well, and hoping that we can address some of those concerns we have.
All right, well, as I said, I thought it was very well crafted. I hope that everybody gets a chance to see it when it can make a difference.
Curtis, could I ask a question about this?
Sure.
So Curtis, I do have a question because in the bill, it says that the city or counties can't require any additional licenses, requirements, or fees. So it doesn't sound like there's a provision in this bill to actually allow any other jurisdiction to collect any money from an electrician or electrical contractor. Am I interpreting that wrong, or do you have a different interpretation of that?
That's one of my clarifying questions that I want to have with Mr. Wilcott, because a lot of cities have business licenses just to have a business in town, right? So will that prohibit in that line, your building department may not require a business license, but your other, financial or someone else, in the city may require that, because again, we're going to have to get information from contractors one way or other, and that's at least an application process, and so is there justifications or some type of, whether you call it a registration or not, that's the clarification I need to get from Mr. Wilcott.
Well, there's nothing in the bill relative to how it relates to local jurisdictions as far as building codes, qualifications, what code test is going to be required. It's different in most jurisdictions, or many. And there's lots of inconsistencies. For example, the insurance. I don't know how many individual electricians are going to carry $500,000 liability policy. They require work comp in the bill itself, but in the summary, it does not. And very few individual licensees are going to have insurance in their own name. And who's checking it?
And when you have changes of that fact, the cost of increased of carrying insurance is going to be put to increased prices, that a contractor is going to push down to it.
They are very vague in their differentiation between, well, they're not vague, but they should be more explicit about whether they're licensing contractors or craftsmen or journeyman electricians. And they go back and forth several places. That sort of confuses it. I think the goal, need to state what the goal here is. The Contractor Licensing Review Board, we believe we need to take a position and make it clear to the senators and perhaps the congressmen who've already voted on it, what our position is. And we've gotten approval from the county generally to take a strong position. The Board of County Commissioners. So anybody that has any contrary thoughts, we've asked them, nobody spoke up.
I'm going to just jump in because it seems like we're not doing raised hands. Let me lower my hand. My name is Karen Sirkovich, and I'm based in Johnson County. I believe the intent of this bill, having spoken with some legislators, was to create reciprocity across the state. And I don't necessarily disagree with that for contractors that are on the building side of our kind of umbrella of trades, especially if they are very large contractors doing work all across the state. It is cumbersome to have and track all of the different licensing requirements. I can acknowledge that. The problem with this bill is, one, that only applies to a very, very small percentage of electrical contractors. Two, I'm also a plumbing and mechanical contractor. We do service work. So I'm in Johnson County. I do a little in Wyandotte, sometimes Douglas, but those are kind of like my area of the world. To treat all electrical contractors as if they would desire to do work across the state, I think is a huge misstep. There are a lot of electrical contractors that are very capable, do a great job, and it's 1 or 2 man shops. So those, I would say, are almost probably, if we count them all up in number, the majority of our electricians across the state, not the big mega companies. We know their names. And so we would really be hampering and putting an undue burden on our smaller contractors. And then, not to mention, putting this authority under the fire marshal is a whole nother, I think, hugely problematic move, because I'm not sure how many of us are aware, but the fire marshal electrical code is only on the 2007. They're 20 years past. They're working on a 20-year, almost 20-year-old code. They can't even get up to, 2016, 2018. I mean, if we could at least get within this decade, it would show some kind of competence in terms of running their division. I think it's hugely incompetent that they're back 20 years ago. And so adding regulation burden to that particular office, I think, is hugely problematic as well. I did submit written testimony, but these are other points that I just wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also agree with that. That was one of my concerns. A majority of, or the bill increases the number of hours required. And if you watch the legislation video of testimony in the House, the union is what was pushing for that because they want a national standard. And there's a big difference between the eastern third of the state, which has more union type members and fees and pricing, compared to that one-man shop that, because of the one-man shop, they can afford and not have to charge the bigger prices and still get the work done. And that's why they don't want to be in unions. So that's a big step up of requirements, which in turn, I look at technical colleges and skilled professionals. that's going to delay educating people to get qualified. Now you're going to get experience, but it's going to delay, which that's a point to bring up in my opinion, is if you want to slow down construction or delay skilled labor for basic residential construction, then this is an issue.
And in the eastern half of the state, we've had a terrible shortage of mechanics, of qualified electricians, almost every trade, but electricians are the worst. Any other remarks?
Augie, I have all that remark.
Pardon me? Go ahead, Dusty.
I'm Dusty Brown with Electric Associates. I've read the bill and it needs a lot of rewording, rewriting in it, because reading through it, it's almost written for individual licensing for your workers in the field for the majority of the bill. And there are some references to a contractor. If this is simply a contractor license for the state, then it should be just verbiage for contractor. This does not preclude you from having to go to each individual entity, whether it's Overland Park, Leewood, Shawnee, or McPherson, Kansas, wherever you're working, and have to buy a business license and prove that you've got your work comp insurance and your liability insurance. I have worked in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Iowa, and some of those states have reciprocal licensing. I've had to go to those states and test in those states. But when I went and did a project in Enid, Oklahoma, Preston, Iowa, I had to buy those permits and those licenses in those counties and jurisdictions. So the wording is just terrible in the bill. If Kansas wants a state license, I think it's more of a grab for revenue than it is about anything else. And with the verbiage as it is, I think it's leaning more toward individual mandates on every worker that you have out there. And what we've got going on in apprenticeship programs and JUCO programs and other programs that have popped up, not everybody takes the same path to become a journeyman. There are so many different paths into this trade. And if you just stamp it as, hey, you got to be an apprentice under a journeyman, that's under a master, that's under a contractor, you have just failed people trying to get into the trade marvelously.
I agree.
Well, if they made it an optional state license, I feel like it could still check the boxes of making it reciprocal. And still work, like, that's what Missouri has. Missouri has an optional state license, but it's not mandated. And if they would mirror that program, it might be able to check the boxes of reciprocation without putting all these undue hardships and gutting the local control.
I think what they did is copy and paste a lot of verbiage from neighboring states and how they do statewide licensing. But when you go to those neighboring states, those license requirements are for the apprentice, they're for the journeyman, they're for the master, and they're for the contractor. So, you know, if we living here in Wild West between Missouri and Kansas, because every state we touch has mandated licensing. I'm not saying I'm against the statewide license, but you can't push it down into the workforce. It's for the contractor.
Mr. Chair. But the training requirements and the experience requirements are an individual requirement, not a contract requirement.
Yeah, as I read through that bill, they had 900 and some odd hours for residential license. Guys, the residential license that the union used to have was 4,000 hours on job training. It did not have a classroom atmosphere. atmosphere attached to it. 960 hours of classroom training for a residential license is more hours than we put in a 4-year apprenticeship program through ABC. It's more hours than they put in the union apprenticeship, which is 5-year program. So the verbiage is terrible throughout the
The
bill.
residential electrician is the only one that mandates education.
Right.
The rest of them don't.
Right. So I'm saying, when I read through this
Yeah.
thing is all pushing for individual licensing for your workforce. And we have some municipalities around Kansas that require, whether it's Lawrence or Leavenworth. Used to be Kansas City, Kansas, they gave it up. Harrisville's now got a journeyman license requirement out there. So we're dealing with that anyhow, in local jurisdictions, and they aren't gonna throw it out over any of that. They're still looking for their piece of pie that they collect.
Oh. Yeah, some of the other inconsistencies in it are the fees, it's an open book. Like not open book, it's an open issue. It's gonna be whatever they decide they want to charge. And they have a naive cost estimate of what it might cost that fire marshal to run the program, which
Yeah, so those numbers.
is within
So
maybe a factor of 5.
I'd say that as the politicians, they need to use caution in what they're trying to mandate before they engage it. And if they wanted to do their due diligence, they would create the fire marshal board and start asking electric contractors for input before they do anything with the mandate.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I had a few comments after reading it. I mean, being a building official, it doesn't affect me as much as it does the electrical contractors. I'm concerned for the electrical contractors when I read through this, and a couple of the reasons is the way I understand what they've written in there as far as establishing the licensed board. It's just political appointees. It doesn't say anything about them having to have any kind of background in electrical work at all.
correct.
So in my opinion, that's an oversight in this bill. The actionable things in there on somebody's license, the way I interpret the way it's currently written is the fire marshal just has the ability to take action on somebody's license without a review, like we have our board here. If somebody's license is in question or something like that, they get the opportunity to come and state their case. The way this is written, it's in the reverse order of that. You would have action taken on your license and then you can appeal it. Don't think that's an appropriate way to handle that, so I would be concerned for the electricians there. There seems to be something in there where they can just levy $1,000 fines whenever they want for, some stated purpose. So I don't like that either. There's a testing agency listed in there that doesn't even offer electrical license testing. So
They want it out of business.
so that's another concern. They're not really setting this standard. I would prefer to see something along the line. I mean, if you agree with the concept of having a statewide license, I just think there's 2 better ways to do it. One would be to set a minimum standards for which licenses you can achieve, and then allow the groups that are already issuing licenses to administer that. The fee part would probably need to be worked out if you can establish a base fee for that throughout the state, so it's the same, so that you're not bid shopping for your license in Johnson County versus Sedgwick County versus Lawrence or someplace like that. So if they were just to set the standard for it and then say, hey, if you've gotten your license, you met the statewide standard, then you're good in the state. And then we just change the card for electricians to have Kansas symbol on it or something so that they're good in the state. And the other thing would be, the other avenue I would think would be appropriate would be is if they want statewide licensing for trades, they should establish a license bureau in the state. And you know, this is probably going to be unpopular in this room, but do them all. Don't cherry one. And underneath the fire marshal, I mean, they're not a licensing agency. They're a code enforcement agency. They should stick to that and not issue licenses. I know they're doing elevators and boilers, but that's all third party inspection related type program there. That's not really a license issuing program. So I just think asking the fire marshal to change their service that they provide is inappropriate. This is the wrong place for that. In reading your comment about the copy and paste, I think the fire marshal grabbed some copy and paste language out of stuff they already have for what they do with the elevators and boilers and threw it in there. And that's where a lot of that came from. There's some language in there about alcohol use and drug use, but they don't set any parameters. My concern with that would be if somebody could just call the state fire marshal's office and say, hey, the guy was drinking on my job, you need to pull his license. May or may not be true. You may just be angry at him for something he did or didn't do on the job, or your ex-wife or something like that. Call him up and saying, hey, you know, this guy's got a problem, and then they would be able to take action on your license, and then you would have the ability to appeal it. So I have some concerns about that. It also seems to open the door for consumer complaints, and that doesn't have any current guidelines or parameters on what somebody can file a complaint regarding to the fire marshal. So those are my concerns, and that's really just for concern for the electricians. Because I wouldn't have to deal with it directly, but you know, it impacts people that we work with every day. And I think that there are better ways to handle this, and as I've stated, I just don't think this is the right place or the right agency to be even conducting this type of business in the state.
Thank you
for me, Augie.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
sir.
This is Cindy Geyer. Hi. I would like to specifically address the issue of the Kansas State Fire Marshal managing this program, or the proposal for them to manage the program. Jim's comments were excellent. Everything everyone said so far, I completely agree with. So to provide new information only on the State Fire Marshal. They do currently provide fire alarm and sprinkler company registration. It's not licensing, that's just a registration. You check in the box and you send it back to the State Fire Marshal saying, this is my qualification, this is what I do repair and modification, I do installation, I do design. So that is required for fire alarm and fire sprinkler. And then they provide what they call licensing for fire extinguishers, for fixed fire sprinkler systems, and then for fixed agent extinguishing systems, hood and duct and clean agent systems. So those are all 4 licenses, 2 registrations, very appropriate in the purview of a fire marshal's office, and specifically state of Kansas Fire Marshal's office. I feel that they are adequately providing that program. There is currently, I submitted fire alarm drawings to the state a couple days ago and got back a notice that they will look at them within 30 days and send comments back. That's a time period we as contractors cannot even deal with. We need a much more immediate response. The justification for the county licensing that we're attending today, monthly meetings where the public can come and bring an issue to the board, the state would have absolutely no equivalent to that and no ability to provide that. I also have a concern, unless I'm missing something, that this is only concerning electrical contractors, not plumbing, not mechanical. I think that might be, and I mean, obviously they can't supervise those either, but I hate to peel off electrical contractor licensing to a completely different field than it currently is. So those are my main comments. The state fire marshal, there is a continual revolving door of employees there. The inspectors there and the staff handle certain parts of the state, and they flip-flop those all the time. Just for kicks, you get to know one area and they switch you to from southeastern Kansas to southwestern Kansas. So I think that is a concern too, that the state, with their revolving door, oftentimes supervision is lacking and qualifications are lacking as they bring in new people and they hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to comment on the intent. I had a contractor call Mr. Wilcott, and he explained to them that plumbing and mechanical were discussed shortly. However, didn't think that it was the right time to get them in, because this would be like the stepping stone to get this worked out. So then in a year or two, they could make provisions to adopt them as well. So that's their intent, is basically get the program up and running and then add the other contractors in there. They just said plumbing, mechanical, HVAC. They didn't get into builder and other trades that aren't the state mandated licensed ones. So I would expect it to be in the near future once they get this going.
And to that
they also
point, they're
said-
only, so sorry, Curtis. I thought you were,
Sorry.
oh, wait.
Go
Were
ahead.
you finished? I did not mean to talk over you. To that point, they're only looking at this from the purview of contractors who are builders. They're not taking any consideration into those of us, which is my firm, that are service-based. And so that's where I think this, I understand the intent, I get it, but I think this is very ill-advised and would drastically hurt the service side of our industry, the fixers.
Just as an aside, if this is step one of a proposed 5 steps, I think they would have done a better job. A bit more careful about it. I got a list, 3 pages of inconsistencies and vagueness and things to be decided later. So with government, that seems not a good thing. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I got one. So, Mitch Stringman, building official for Porter Village. Reading through this bill, does this bill only apply to electrical contractors? Or does this mean that homeowners could be prosecuted as well? Seriously,
No, I never looked at it. That's a great comment.
not that I think homeowners should be doing electrical work, but could a homeowner be prosecuted under this, all this getting passed here? Or is it just an out for an insurance agency to not pay out on some kind of a fire damage over an electrical issue?
Yeah, homeowner can do anything in their own house that they want to. They can endanger themselves all day long.
So. If they're gonna write a bill, I think they need to be very clear about what this enforcement action is over.
Well, in hindsight of the 20 years, this program has been in, it was far more carefully crafted to begin with. by attorneys with a lot of construction experience. I don't think that was the case here. In anyone, but there were missteps in this program too. And they ultimately got resolved. But this is so deep. No telling where it may go.
I have,
Okay,
who would like to comment? Kira.
Chair, I think we have Tim and Chris from Sedgwick County on the Zoom.
good.
We are. Thank you very much. Chris Labram here. Yeah, Tim Wagner. I'm the director of MABCD. Tim Wagner is my assistant. Thanks for letting us join today. We totally echo and agree with everything we're hearing here. Couple things, just to point out. One, we apologize to the group for getting surprised by this the way we did. Our lobbyists all along have told us this was not going to go anywhere. So it really did surprise us when it made it this far. We understand that it was a group, which I think has kind of been pointed out by Karen, that it was a group of contractors who do a lot of work in Missouri as well. And they wanted their main emphasis was to be able to do a license in both Kansas and Missouri, or to not have to pay an extra license in Missouri. But same, we do not fundamentally oppose statewide standards or statewide licensing, but like so many things we've seen with this, it's just half baked, and you all have pointed that out in several areas. A few to emphasize: the licensing agency portion you all brought up would be important. The verbiage with testing really confuses me. I know someone kind of hit on that, but they talk a lot about agency testing in there, which agencies don't administer a test. You just pointed out homeowners. We allow homeowners to test and do work on their homes. So are they going to, would we no longer be allowed those programs? Or would we be expected to keep those programs going, but without the support of revenue that we now get from licensing? And also, as you had discussed, I think earlier as well, the verbiage between licensing of contractors and certification of the trades professionals needs a lot of work, because it bounces back and forth and has me wondering what they're talking about with that. It also does not cover the relationship from license to permit to inspection. So exactly that, if I go out and we have an issue with the permit and we're putting a stop work order on a job and all that comes with that, and contractors not being able to schedule inspections going forward, do we just call the state, tell them they need to show up and help us out with that? I doubt that's going to work. So a lot of things in there, just as you've said. And I think if they want to do something with this, the main play would be to back up, realize it's got to apply to all trades. It's going to be way weird to have us do it, continuing our normal licensing and certification cycle for plumbers and mechanical, but kick the electricians to the state. We've got a lot of companies in the service industry, again, just as Karen said, that are licensed across those trades. So yeah, just there's a lot of things in here where if we could get them to realign and put something that makes sense forward next year would definitely be the way to go if this is something that the industry still wants to go forward with.
Tim, did you made remarks about your lobbyist? Are they prepared to jump into the fire here?
I don't know. We've sent out to them our surprise at seeing this go this far based on previous feedback, and I haven't gotten anything back from them yet. Well, I take that back. The only thing I've gotten back from them is they said they expect that this will be kicked back to committee from the Senate, not just be heard in the Senate.
Well, the Builder Association lobbyist said that same thing about the House. They didn't think it was less than an hour and a half.
I can say that the Associated Building Contractors, Heartland is going to Topeka tomorrow, and this is one of the items that I'm participating in that, and this is one of the items that we have to discuss. But I'm curious, and forgive me if I'm speaking online, is it out of line for the Johnson County Contracting Board, Licensing Board to write a letter in opposition of this to the senators? Or is that because there's only a very few of us on this that we have to do it all individually?
That is the plan. For
Okay.
this board take a position, and to include remarks about having pulled our contractors with no support found at all. The Johnson County Board of County Commissioners was, at least the law department was a little skeptical and didn't think it would go that fast. You don't want to elaborate on it, do you, Scott?
Things happen in Topeka.
Yeah, Scott's a man of few words.
Okay.
about it.
All right.
But it did pass the House with overwhelming numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would assume that that's something that the senators will pay attention to when they review whether they're gonna floor this bill.
Do they actually read these bills before they vote on them? That's my question. Do they? Do they even know what they're voting on?
I would think that the contractors themselves would have more weight in this conversation than the Johnson County Contractor Licensing Board would. Because we would be viewed as a competing agency. Whereas the contractors would be the ones that are being regulated by this action.
I can say definitively that the majority of the Johnson County legislators in the House have my personal cell phone. I have theirs. We have ongoing conversations. This came out of the blue, and not one of them reached out to me and asked my point of view on this bill. And these are people I grab coffee with on a regular basis. So it caught me off guard. I only found out about it because Associated Building Contractors brought it to our attention.
And I think that point holds for government agencies as well. It seems to be that they're just assuming that we will oppose it because of what it does to our programs. So I agree that the contractors' voice in this, and Karen, everything you've said very well. So I think that and your voice in this will be the biggest piece.
Yeah, then if nothing else comes out of this meeting, we want to encourage all of the electricians to communicate with, if not just your senator and representatives, maybe all of them.
What's the process of the Senate? Who decides whether the bill?
I don't think we know what committee it's going to go to yet, do we?
Or
It's going to the Senate. I don't know. I think,
It will go to a committee first.
yeah.
They have
As
not
of this
assigned-
morning, it had not been assigned,
Okay.
at least
Probably-
according to the bill tracker.
Okay, yeah, I checked yesterday.
As far as with legislature up there as a contractor, we know what we want to talk about. How it affects Johnson County contractor licensing and your continuing education program is what, as a contractor, we would need to know. How does that affect us as a contractor? Are you just gonna nix your program? Are you gonna continue it but charge it? What's it do to other entities
We
around?
wouldn't have any need to offer electrical training.
So the fire marshal, I'm sure, does not have a program in place.
I'm sure they don't either.
No.
So I'm assuming that they probably are blindsided by this whole bill passing as well, as far as fire marshal. Because he's probably looking at it going, well, maybe we can get some revenue, but he hadn't talked about training anybody. So he's probably expecting Johnson County Contractor Licensing to continue
Well, not only that,
CEUs.
they would have to approve any continued education clause.
So
You will accept it
as far as us going before those guys tomorrow, if we had something in our hand from Johnson County Contractor Licensing, letter or statement about what would happen to the education program, or asking questions about what the fire marshal intends to do for education programs around the state.
But pretty clear, they're just laying it off. The other people have to find it on their own. And I'm speaking for myself, not for the program, but I would have terrible moral concerns about spending contractor licensing money providing for electrical education.
But we would have to charge for the classes if we were
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
direct staff to even administer. I mean, the root of our program is the educational piece of it. That's the entire premise of what we're doing with the Johnson County Contractor Licensing Program, is making sure that people are educated. And speaking from a code official standpoint, that has had huge benefits to the community, because we're just writing fewer things up than we used to, because contractors are getting in the room in the classes. Now granted, a lot of that has to happen on the contractor's end, because we're not seeing people in the classroom that are out there twisting wire nuts together. We're seeing the people that are holding the qualifying individual for the license. So they've got to pass that knowledge on and have their own internal training program on some level in order to benefit that. But I assume that some of that is happening because we're seeing less problems in the field than we used to when I started back in 1991.
Right.
If the intent was for the state fire marshal's office to start a program that was really meant just to be reciprocal with other counties and cities, I could kind of understand that concept. But the way this is wrote, this puts the state fire marshal's office in charge of it all. But they do make the comment that the state fire marshal shall administer such exams or may designate any city or county to administer such exams as directed by the state fire marshal. But again, that puts everything under the umbrella of the state fire marshal to even come back and say, well, we'll let Johnson County Contractor Licensing Program do this too.
But no city or state or county provides exams. Now, and they're not proctors.
Yeah, correct. We accept those and validate those exams from the testing agencies. And as you all have pointed out in this discussion, there's that as it with any rule, they're stating the timeline for rules and regs, but there is a lot of ground to cover and a lot of variables on the table between what's written here and what could and would be placed in rules and regulations. Another thing I did see and heard in some of this, that when the state fire marshal was engaged and spoke individually with legislators, that he stated his intent. That's the reason they put the 1 July 27 in this, is he said that was as quickly as they could be ready to administer, and that would give him time to try to bring plumbing and mechanical into this as well. So he has stated that to legislators, to my knowledge. Curtis may have more info on that.
Basically the same thing. Sounds like he's continued the same conversations with a few of us it's a stepping stone to get this going and wrap everything into it. And when he responded back to me, I emailed him the other day about it. Again, he was on emergency fires. So his primary role is emergency response. And so with the experience we've had with the fire marshal's office, it's tough to get that confidence. And with a new governor coming up, will we have the same fire marshal?
Amen to all that. It sure seems like, and again, here we go again with the state in general and the state fire marshal, of if you want to do something like this, why can't we talk about what we want to do and why and where it should start? Because I don't ever start anything with licensing. I start it with the code. And and the code sets the requirements for licensing, sets the requirements for certifications, which sets the requirements for education. And we figure out then how to, how to administer that and enforce that. So yeah, this is just another case of pull the pin on a grenade, throw it in the middle of everything and see how far you can get.
And for years, the struggle of adopting new codes, and the fire marshal now is limited to they can't increase, or they can't justify the financial increase because of the gap of codes that are there now. So it opens up a Pandora's box of everything, but he's talking about it. It's just there hasn't been any action to make progress.
And it sure seems like that's where we would start. I know he did not appreciate my comment with, I can't, was that 418 or one of them? He didn't appreciate my comments there when, based on a question I got asked, I said, hey, yeah, here I have once again driven to Topeka to defend my 2024 versions of codes and vetted local amendments, some of which the ICC is implementing in future code cycles and considering a best practice, not more so than an amendment. And I'm here to defend that against the 2006 version of the code that the state's using. So it's mind blowing.
Bear in mind that this is fire marshal with a second choice. That was, the other girl turned him down.
And if you saw his response in the meeting, it was very clear. They felt well above what trade people were. It was pretty touchy on how they elaborated.
Also, and I would be glad to expand this conversation, but I'm embarrassed as a professional in this construction industry for as many years I have, that this could be so poorly put together, so half-heartedly written, such a mishmash of various statements that just don't come together at all. And it's an embarrassment. The senators, or the congressmen that voted for it should be embarrassed. But then I don't have any filters. What's next? Anything else we can?
We have another comment on Zoom from Victor Campos. He says, I'm with Fields Electric and I believe we are being treated unfairly. We have been working for Johnson and Wyandotte counties for over 30 years and we need to continue to keep the things the way they are. As the old saying goes, why fix something that isn't broken?
Well, I'm sure that in the western part of the state, Curtis, there's people that are unqualified, that are practicing perhaps dangerous practices, and maybe state licensing in general is a good idea. I would not argue against that.
Well, I see the small communities that really don't have any type of inspections or programs that this would change, because they're going to continue to do the practice because there's no real oversight, right? I mean, if a city requires you to walk in, give them $50 and you get an electrical license, that's going to continue. I mean, they're not going to really change that, because again, what oversight or accountability is that? And that may cause small jurisdictions to have, that somebody brought up, a homeowner has a complaint and now they'll go after, and the state fire marshal come to their small town and shut this guy down, and that's just, it's going to open up a big thing. I would think it'd be good, yes, that you have qualified people in your city. I agree with that. But I don't know that the cities that of 3,000 people and under are going to change their practice.
Won't they be required to?
Who's gonna make them? I mean, nobody's making them do anything now. So what's gonna make them do it then?
The integration of this with the codes administrators is very lacking too. Okay, well, nothing else. Anybody wants to stay, and we're gonna try and convey this to everybody that'll listen to us. But as they said, the bigger voice is gonna be from the contractors.
Even though they haven't announced where this bill is going to land, like what committee, the logical choice is commerce. So I put in the chat the email address to the commerce assistant, and I would say everybody needs to alert their friends that are in licensed electricians about this, because I think there's a lot of people of us out there in the population that are not aware or didn't catch this, because it's literally been in the last 2 weeks that everything kind of turned sideways. And unfortunately blow them up in the Senate with emails and phone calls letting them know how we like the idea, but this implementation is not the right path forward.
There was somebody just asked if there was a summary or wrap up of this, and we're gonna try and make a recording of it available online. All right, Brian. So anybody that's interested can listen to it again. If there's, I think we all have a feel for what's the consensus opinion about this. So
The letter that you're gonna be put together for the board, can we provide that to our electrical contractors so that they can use that as a basis to at least forward on?
I'm not sure who's actually gonna draft it, but yeah.
Or whoever's got, yeah. Well, you are the boss.
That means I gotta delegate. All right, thank you, everybody that's participated in this. We really
Augie?
appreciate it. Yes,
Sorry. Before we close, we do need to hopefully get a formal motion of your position. So that way we're kind of signed, sealed, delivered. I'm not good with words, but I know Scott's there.
yeah, I mean, there's so many issues within the bill that, I don't think we can make a very specific one other than saying we're opposed to it as it's currently drafted. And if there's somebody want to make that motion, pretty certain it'll pass.
I'll make the motion
I'll state it.
that we, don't approve or of this bill as it's currently written at all.
I'll second it.
Should also authorize submitting testimony.
And authorize submitting testimony.
Anything else,
I'm
Scott?
presenting in person. Yeah, that. Please.
Well, you said.
All right. You second the amendment?
Yes, sir.
All right. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Was that a late aye or intentional?
I'm sorry, this is Cindy. That was a late aye.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Scott, do we need a
So it's unanimous.
motion to send out communications to the contractors, to contact their representatives or anything like that? Is that?
Oh, I think that just processed.
Yeah.
Start process.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does staff have the ability to capture the comments in the chat?
Yes, right.
And does anybody that made any comments in the chat have any opposition to those comments being utilized in a letter drafted to the Senate?
I'm good with it.
Good point.
Guys, appreciate you
Interesting.
this morning.
Okay.
Out of your hair.
Everyone, ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for participating. And you'll be hearing from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I move we close the meeting.
Mitch.
Yep.
Yep. Meeting's closed.
Second.
Tim, are you still there?